There is a financial system hidden in plain sight, one that has been sitting on nightstands, in church pews, and on bookshelves for thousands of years. It is not taught in business schools. It is not discussed on Wall Street. And it is certainly not something your bank wants you to understand. Because if you truly understood what the Bible teaches about money, debt, lending, and wealth creation, the entire modern financial system would lose its grip on you. And that is exactly why we need to talk about it today. Let me be very clear from the beginning. This is not about religion versus finance. This is not about preaching to you or telling you what to believe spiritually. This is about a concrete, practical, and devastatingly effective system of managing money that was laid out thousands of years ago, a system that directly contradicts almost everything modern banks, credit card companies, and financial institutions want you to do with your money. And when you see the contrast, you will understand why this information has been quietly ignored by the people who profit from your financial ignorance. Let us start with the most foundational principle, one that banks have spent billions of dollars trying to make you forget. The Bible says the borrower is slave to the lender. That is Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7. Read it again. The borrower is slave to the lender. Now think about that for a moment. Every single product that a modern bank sells you is designed to put you on one side of that equation, and it is not the lender side. Your mortgage, your car loan, your student loans, your credit cards, your personal lines of credit, every single one of these products is designed to make you a borrower. And according to this ancient financial principle, every time you sign on that dotted line, you are voluntarily entering into a form of slavery. That is not my opinion. That is what the text says. And the banking industry knows this. They know that once you are in debt, you are trapped. You cannot leave your job because you have payments. You cannot start a business because you have obligations. You cannot invest because your money is already spoken for. Debt is the chain, and the bank holds the key. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The Bible did not just warn against borrowing. It actually laid out an entire economic system designed to prevent the kind of debt slavery that modern banking thrives on. And the centerpiece of that system is something called the year of release. In Deuteronomy chapter 15, there is a command that every 7 years all debts were to be canceled. Not restructured, not refinanced, canceled, completely wiped out. Imagine that for a moment. Imagine if every 7 years your mortgage disappeared, your student loans vanished, your credit card balances went to zero. What would that do to the banking industry? It would destroy it. And that is exactly the point. The ancient system was designed so that no person and no institution could build permanent power over others through lending. Debt was meant to be temporary, a short-term tool, never a permanent condition. Compare that to today, where the average American carries debt for their entire adult life, often dying with obligations still outstanding. The modern system is the exact opposite of what was prescribed, but it goes even deeper than that. The Bible also laid out rules about interest. And this is the part that would make every banker in the world uncomfortable. In Exodus chapter 22, and again in Leviticus chapter 25, charging interest to your own people, to your community, to your neighbors, was explicitly forbidden. You could lend, but you could not charge interest on that loan. Think about what that means. The entire business model of modern banking, which is built on charging interest, would be considered fundamentally wrong under this system. Every credit card with its 18 or 24% interest rate, every payday loan with its 300% annual rate, every mortgage that has you paying back twice what you borrowed over 30 years, all of it stands in direct opposition to this principle. And here is the thing that most people do not realize. This was not some obscure rule buried in the text. This was a central economic principle. It was so important that the prophets repeatedly condemned the practice of charging excessive interest. Ezekiel chapter 18 lists charging interest right alongside serious moral failures. It was considered that significant. Now you might be thinking, well, that was an ancient agricultural society. It does not apply to modern economics. But here is what is fascinating. The principles behind these rules are actually more relevant today than ever before. The reason interest was forbidden within the community was because it creates an extractive relationship. When you charge interest, you are not creating wealth. You are transferring wealth from the borrower to the lender. Nothing new is produced, nothing new is built. Money simply moves from someone who has less to someone who has more. And over time, this creates exactly what we see in the modern world, a massive concentration of wealth at the top and crushing debt at the bottom. The system was designed to prevent exactly this outcome. Let us talk about another principle that has been completely buried by modern financial thinking, the concept of the Jubilee. Every 50 years, according to Leviticus chapter 25, there was to be a complete economic reset, all debts canceled, all land returned to its original family owners, all servants set free. This was not charity. This was economic policy. It was a systematic prevention of permanent inequality. Think about what this would mean today. Every 50 years, the playing field would be completely leveled. No family could accumulate dynastic wealth that stretched across generations while other families remained permanently poor. No corporation could gobble up all the land and resources and hold them indefinitely. The system had a built-in reset button that prevented the kind of extreme inequality we see today, where a handful of people own more than the bottom half of the entire planet combined. Now ask yourself, why do you never hear about this in economics classes? Why do financial advisors never mention it? Why do banks never bring it up? Because the Jubilee principle is the single greatest threat to the modern financial system ever conceived. If it were implemented today, the big banks, the hedge funds, the private equity firms, the real estate empires, all of them would be fundamentally disrupted. And that is why this knowledge has been suppressed, not through conspiracy, but through simple neglect. It is not in the interest of powerful financial institutions for you to know that an alternative system exists, one that was specifically designed to prevent them from having the power they currently hold. Let us move on to what the Bible says about how wealth should actually be created, because this is where things get really practical. The consistent message throughout the text is that wealth comes from productive work, from creating value, from building something real. Proverbs chapter 13 verse 11 says wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. This is a direct contradiction of everything modern finance tells you. Wall Street says you should look for the quick win, the hot stock, the crypto moonshot, the leveraged trade that makes you rich overnight. The ancient system says the exact opposite. Real wealth is built slowly, steadily, through consistent productive effort. And here is the thing, the data actually backs this up. The vast majority of people who try to get rich quick end up losing money. Day traders lose money. Lottery winners go broke. People who inherit sudden wealth frequently end up worse off than before. But people who build businesses slowly, who save consistently, who invest patiently over decades, they are the ones who actually build lasting wealth. The ancient principle is not just morally superior, it is practically superior. There is also a powerful principle about diversification that most people miss entirely. Ecclesiastes chapter 11 verse 2 says, "Give a portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what disaster may happen on earth." This is investment diversification, written thousands of years before modern portfolio theory. Do not put all your resources in one place. Spread them out. Because you cannot predict the future, and concentration of assets is concentration of risk. This is the same principle that every good financial advisor teaches today, but it was written in ancient wisdom literature long before anyone had ever heard of a stock market. Now let us talk about something that might be controversial, but is absolutely critical to understanding the biblical money system, and that is the principle of generosity as a wealth-building strategy. This sounds counterintuitive. How can giving money away make you wealthier? but the Bible is absolutely insistent on this point. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 24 says, "One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want." Proverbs chapter 19 verse 17 says, "Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed." Luke chapter 6 verse 38 says, "Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over." This is not just spiritual talk. There is a practical mechanism at work here. When you are generous, you build social capital, you build trust, you build relationships, you build a reputation. And in any economy, ancient or modern, these things have enormous practical value. People want to do business with generous people. People want to help generous people. Opportunities flow toward people who are known for their generosity. It is not magic, it is social economics, and it works. The biblical system also has a very specific view on savings that contradicts modern consumer culture. The story of Joseph in Genesis is essentially a masterclass in financial planning. When Pharaoh had a dream about 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine, Joseph's advice was simple. During the good years, save 20% of everything, store it up, build reserves, so that when the bad years come, and they always come, you are prepared. This is the opposite of what modern consumer culture teaches. Today, the message is spend everything you make, and if you run out, borrow more. Credit cards exist specifically to enable you to spend money you do not have. But the ancient system says save during abundance so you can survive during scarcity. And notice the percentage, 20%. Modern financial advisors typically recommend saving 10 to 15% of your income. Joseph recommended 20%. And it saved an entire civilization from starvation. That is not a metaphor. That is a financial strategy that literally saved millions of lives. Let us talk about another principle that is absolutely devastating to the modern financial industry, and that is the principle of contentment. First, Timothy chapter 6 verse 6 says, "Godliness with contentment is great gain." Hebrews chapter 13 verse 5 says, "Keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have." Now, why would this be threatening to banks and financial institutions? Because their entire business model depends on your discontent. Every advertisement, every marketing campaign, every credit card offer is designed to make you feel like you do not have enough, like you need more, like you need to borrow to get the things that will finally make you happy. Contentment is the enemy of consumer debt. A person who is content with what they have does not need a new car loan. They do not need to max out their credit cards on things they do not need. They do not need to take out a home equity line of credit to renovate a house that is perfectly fine. Contentment is the most powerful financial tool you will ever possess, and it costs absolutely nothing. But it would cost the banking industry billions in lost revenue, which is why you will never see a bank commercial encouraging you to be content. There is also a fascinating principle about multiple streams of income that appears throughout the biblical text. The virtuous woman described in Proverbs chapter 31 is essentially a serial entrepreneur. She buys and sells real estate. She runs a textile business. She trades in merchandise. She manages agricultural operations. She does not depend on a single source of income. She has diversified her earnings across multiple ventures. This is exactly what modern wealth builders do. They do not rely on a single paycheck. They build businesses, invest in assets, create passive income streams, and diversify their sources of revenue. The principle is ancient, but it is exactly what the wealthiest people in the modern world practice. Now, here is something that ties all of these principles together, and it is perhaps the most important concept of all. The biblical money system is built on a fundamentally different view of ownership than the modern system. The modern system says your money is yours. Do whatever you want with it. The biblical system says everything belongs to God and you are a steward, a manager of what has been entrusted to you. This might sound like it has no practical application, but it actually changes everything about how you handle money. If you believe the money is yours, you spend it on yourself. You hoard it. You use it for your own pleasure and status. If you believe you are a steward, you manage it wisely, you invest it for growth, you use it to benefit others. You are careful and intentional with every dollar because you will have to give an account of how you managed it. The stewardship mindset leads to better financial decisions across the board. It leads to less impulsive spending, more thoughtful investing, greater generosity, and ultimately, greater wealth accumulation. It is a paradox. But people who hold their money loosely often end up with more of it than people who clutch it tightly. Let me bring this all together with something that I think will blow your mind. If you take all of these principles and combine them into a single financial system, here is what you get. A system where you avoid debt at all costs, where you never pay interest and ideally never charge excessive interest, where you save at least 20% of your income, where you diversify your investments across multiple assets, where you build wealth slowly through productive work rather than speculation, where you are generous with your resources, where you are content with what you have and do not chase unnecessary consumption, where you think of yourself as a manager of resources rather than an owner, where debts are forgiven regularly and the economic playing field is periodically leveled. Now compare that to the modern financial system, a system where you are encouraged to borrow as much as possible, where interest rates are the primary mechanism of wealth transfer, where saving is discouraged and spending is incentivized, where speculation and gambling on markets is normalized, where generosity is seen as financially foolish, where discontent is manufactured to drive consumption, where debt is permanent and inescapable, where inequality grows exponentially with no reset mechanism, where financial institutions accumulate permanent power over individuals and entire nations. The contrast is staggering, and when you see it laid out like this, you realize that the modern financial system is not just different from the biblical system, it is the exact opposite in almost every way. Every single principle has been inverted, and the result is exactly what you would expect: a world drowning in debt, consumed by anxiety about money, trapped in cycles of earning and spending that never lead to true financial freedom. Here is what I want you to take away from this. You do not have to play by the rules of the modern financial system. You can choose a different path. You can choose to avoid debt. You can choose to save aggressively. You can choose to build wealth slowly through productive work. You can choose to be generous. You can choose to be content. You can choose to diversify your income and your investments. You can choose to think of yourself as a steward rather than a consumer. These are not just spiritual principles. They are practical, proven, time-tested financial strategies that have worked for thousands of years. They worked before banks existed. They worked before credit cards existed. They worked before Wall Street existed, and they will continue to work long after the current financial system has collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. The banks do not want you to know this because a person who follows these principles does not need a bank. They do not need a credit card. They do not need a 30-year mortgage. They do not need a financial advisor telling them to buy products that generate commissions. A person who follows these principles is financially free, and a financially free person is not a profitable customer for any financial institution. So the next time you see a credit card offer in your mailbox, or a car dealership advertising 0% financing, or a bank promoting its latest mortgage product, remember what you learned today. Remember that there is an older system, a better system, one that was designed not to extract wealth from you, but to help you build it, protect it, and share it. Remember that the borrower is slave to the lender and choose to be free. Remember that wealth gained hastily will dwindle and choose to build slowly. Remember that contentment is great gain and choose to stop chasing things you do not need with money you do not have. This knowledge has been available for thousands of years. It has been sitting right there in the most widely printed book in human history, and yet somehow, most people have never been taught these principles. They go to church and hear about spiritual matters, but never learn the practical financial wisdom that fills the very same pages. They go to school and learn about compound interest and credit scores, but never learn about the year of release or the jubilee. They go to the bank and learn about products designed to put them in debt, but never learn about the system designed to set them free. Today, that changes. Today, you know what the banks do not want you to know. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to keep playing their game, a game that is rigged against you from the start? Or are you going to choose a different path? A path that leads to genuine financial freedom. A path that has been tested and proven over thousands of years. A path that is available to anyone willing to follow it, regardless of how much money they currently have or how much debt they are currently carrying. The choice is yours. But now you cannot say you did not know. The secret is out. The ancient system is right there waiting for you. All you have to do is pick it up, read it, and start applying it to your life. One principle at a time, one decision at a time, one day at a time. And slowly, steadily, inevitably, you will find yourself moving from financial slavery to financial freedom. Not because of some get-rich-quick scheme, not because of some secret investment strategy, but because you chose to follow a system that was designed from the very beginning to lead you to prosperity, generosity, and peace of mind. And that is something no bank in the world can ever offer you.